Hey, how you doing? It's the Sovereign CEO podcast. That reminds me of the Arsenio Hall show, where they used to say, Arsenio Hall. I'm dating myself. I grew up in the 80s, can you tell? Yeah. Recession. There's a lot of concern now of America and Europe, the collapsing Western world, going into a recession. Now, technically, America is not in a recession yet. The technical definition of recession means that you have declining GDP 2 successive quarters in a row. We're not quite there, at least not the time of this recording. So technically you're not in a recession, but likely that will start very soon. And if there is a recession, both the United States and Europe and Canada, the collapsing trifecta, United States, Canada, Europe, this will probably be a long one. It's going to be a painful one. It could be maybe 2 years, maybe longer. I don't know. It's hard to tell the future of these things. But most likely, recessions going into the collapse of the Western world are going to take on 2 forms. One is they're going to be longer and more painful. That's one option. 2 is that they will be short and acute because the government will do something insane like send out a bunch of stimmy checks or print trillions of dollars more money, which they could keep doing for a while, but they can't do forever, thus the collapse of the United States. And so in this podcast, I'm going to talk about how you handle a recession as a owner of an Alpha 2.0 location independent business or starting a business. Oh, I don't know if I should start a business now. A recession's coming. Wrong. So I'll give you a few examples. My dad started his first business, where his only business, in one of the biggest recessions of my lifetime, the early 1980s, when you had interest rates as high as like 20+%. And he started his business. It was a mental health counseling business, and his niche was corporations instead of people. It was called employee assistance programs back then. He started that business literally in the middle of a recession, and people thought he was crazy. People thought he was nuts. And if you know my story, know my history, my dad was poor when we were little. He was a low-income worker, worked for the state government, low-income guy supporting a family of 7 on his own income. He was the last generation of men who could actually do this. And so he supported my mom and me and my other siblings. He had a lot of kids. And so we did not have a very financially prosperous childhood. One of the reasons that I make the money I make today is because of the battle scars and the heart palpitations I remember having when I was a little kid and we had no money. And I've talked about that a lot in my other podcasts and articles and things like that. But the other side of that story is that my dad became a self-made millionaire in his lifetime. Now, it took him a long time. It took him about 30 years. But he did it. And so he was able to retire a millionaire and take care of himself and take care of my mom and live a good life as an old man. And today he's been retired now for 30, 40 years. And he was able to pull it off from a business he started during a recession. He was able to do that. There's a saying that I heard recently that I really like. And it's from a race car driver. And the saying is this: I can't pass any cars when it's sunny, but I can pass 15 cars when it's rainy. Think about that for a minute. And what he's saying is, when it's rainy, the other race car drivers get scared, get nervous, which provides him the opportunity to pass them all and win the race. Whereas when it's sunny and everything's great, everyone has a lot of confidence and competition is stronger, therefore he's less likely to win. Genius analogy. I love it to death. Recessions are good. Here's why they're good. Recessions do a number of positive things. Number 1, recessions clean out all the morons. When times are good, many industries get a bunch of business owners and a bunch of companies and a bunch of people who are idiots who make money strictly because it's easier to make money because times are good. That happens all the time. When a recession comes along, it is a cleansing process. What it does is it takes all the morons, all the idiots, all the people who got lucky, and wipes them off the map. They're gone. So now, as competition, they're out of there. Now, you may say, well, Caleb, I thought you talked about how if you niche, you don't have competition. Correct. But the more options your customers have to spend their money, the harder it is for you to get their money, right? Right. So you want the least amount of options they have possible. And recessions do this. Recessions reduce the number of options your customers have to buy. That's why recessions are great. I have lived through 3 different recessions in my adult life. And what is hilarious to me is you have all these famous guys on the internet, famous guys on YouTube, these young millennial guys. And here's a good example. There's a guy named Graham Stephan on YouTube. He seems like a very nice person. You've probably seen his podcasts or videos. And someone asked him, what's the best tactics to use when you have a business during a recession? And he literally said, points for him of being honest, he said, I don't know. I've never been through a recession. Oh my God. I saw a video a while back from Layla Hormozi, which is the wife of Alex Hormozi. And someone was asking her the same thing. Well, how do you handle owning a business in a recession? She goes, I don't know. I've never had a business in a recession. All these young people have never been through a recession. I've been through at least 3 in my adult life. I think actually more. So if you don't count the pandemic, I went through the 2001-2000 dot-com crash / 9/11 crash. I went through the recession of the early 1990s, the outsourcing recession. I went through the big recession of the early 80s. I guess I was an adult back then. And certainly I went through 2008, the global financial crisis. So I've been through several recessions. And in all those recessions, I came out ahead. Now, during the recessions, sometimes it was rough, but I wasn't arrayed the way I am now. And I've talked about how in 2020, which was one of the worst years of many people's lives, my income skyrocketed in 2020 while everyone was freaking out. And my investments, while everyone was losing money, my investment portfolio increased by 140%. I more than doubled my portfolio net worth just in 2020. Awesome, because I'm arrayed to do well when America does poorly. I've been saying for years that America's collapsing. And while people were laughing at me, I was building businesses and investing in investments that would do well when America had trouble. And when America had trouble in 2020, I did great. America's having trouble now. I'm doing fucking great this year. I'm going to do even better next year and better the next year because I've arrayed myself to take advantage of the collapsing West. So that's another way in which you can take advantage of recessions. If you're following my content, you know, unless you don't believe me or disagree with my assessment, that the Western world is in a slow state of collapse. America is collapsing, will collapse in our lifetimes. Same thing with Europe, same thing with Canada. And so there are various businesses you can start and investments you can make to some degree that will take advantage of this collapse. That is another way in which recessions can help you, and recessions are a good thing. Another advantage of recessions, I'm sure you've heard this from people like Robert Kiyosaki and Grant Cardone, these rich guys, is that everything goes on sale during recession because everything collapses. Bitcoin, as the recording of this, just went down to 16,000 from 20,000. Oh my God. Guess what that means? You buy more Bitcoin. You buy it. So when you have money to invest or spend, recessions are the time to buy. Now, obviously, that means you need to have money. If you're poor, that doesn't apply to you. However, if you've been listening to my content the past few years, you don't have that excuse because you've known this is coming. I've been saying this for over 13, 14 years. So if you've been listening to my stuff, you've known this is coming. You should have money by now. I just talked to someone this week in one of our coaching programs. This is a guy who makes strong 6 figures, somewhat location dependent, makes $1 million a year on certain deals he does, and he's been following me for like 15 years. Good for him. So now he is poised to buy those depressed assets during the upcoming recession and make a lot of money when the recession is over. That's how this works. Now, let me discuss the business parallel to this, which I think is even more interesting. And this business parallel is available to anyone at any income level, not just people who have a lot of money to spend. During a recession, it is true that buyers are more reluctant to spend money. That's accurate. However, what is also true during a recession is that businesses are more scared about expanding. So businesses pull back and they get nervous. They cut back on marketing. They cut back on product innovation. They cut back on being aggressive in the marketplace. They cut back on doing social media outreach and things like this. They do. That's just human nature. And that's great news for you because guess what you can do during a recession? You can use that opportunity to push forward, to jack up your activity levels, to really hit these things hard because no one else in your space or very few people or companies in your space will be doing that. You have the advantage when you go on the offensive during a recession or more rocky economic times. Grant Cardone wrote a whole book about this called Sell or Be Sold, which I was actually surprised was kind of a decent book. And that's his entire concept. He wrote that book for the recession of 2008 and 2009, and that's pretty much his entire point of the book. And he's right. While all the other people trying to get money from your clients and customers are pulling back, you can push forward. I can tell you for a fact that nothing has changed in any of my companies in the last few months when all these Americans and Europeans are scared about a recession. Oh no, nothing has changed except we have pushed even harder in the marketing end and on new products and new innovations. If the economy of the United States and Europe continues to worsen, I will continue to be more aggressive, market more, put myself out more, and generate more products and services than before because I know other people in this space are going to start to get scared. Now, again, in my scenario, it's a little different because I was smart enough to start companies like Sovereign CEO that do well when America does poorly. So the worse the economy gets in the United States, Western Europe, Canada, the more customers I'm going to get as Sovereign CEO who want to get the fuck out of the United States, Western Europe, and Canada. So again, this all kind of circles back around. It's a flywheel where every aspect improves upon itself. You have a business that does well when the Western world does poorly. You advance forward when other people are retreating. You take the money and you buy depressed assets with that so you can make money 3, 4, 5 times and it all multiplies together. Recessions are awesome. I used to be afraid of recessions too. Now they're fucking great. And I've heard, and you probably heard, many very wealthy people, wealthy business owners, wealthy investors who say they can't wait for recessions because that's when they make money. Before 2020 hit, I was writing blog articles saying I'm waiting for the next recession because I want my cryptocurrency and other investments to explode in value. And they did, and I cashed out and did very well in 2020. And now, right now, yes, cryptocurrencies and most other assets are in a bear market. That's true. Fine, that's when you buy. If you have no money to buy, start your location independent business and get really aggressive going after your client base, your prospects, your customers, your clients when no one else is. And I would recommend, you don't have to do this. This is optional, but I would recommend if you have no idea what to do in terms of starting your own business, find a business that you think will do well during bad economic times when the United States, Canada, and Europe are collapsing, because they are. You probably don't want to start a business that relies on these things doing well. You want to start a business that relies on these things doing poorly. I mean, that's the secret of my success, at least for the past 5 or 6 years financially, is all my companies are focused around poorer economic times, not great economic times, because those days are over. I'm very sorry. Those days are behind us. This is what happens when you vote for the lesser of two evils for 35 years straight. You destroy your country, and now you're fucked. And this recession is just the next phase of the collapse of the Western world. It's going to get much, much worse over the next 10, 20, 30 years. Get ready. Get your location independent business. Be aggressive out there. Be aggressive with your marketing. Be aggressive with your product offerings. If you have money, buy depressed assets and then chill out and relax and wait and make a shitload of money when the assets rise, when the recession is over. This is a very big topic. This is a complicated topic. If you want me to discuss more about this topic, leave a comment, let me know, and I will see you next week in next week's podcast. Have fun. Bye.